I'm really not concerned about this museum being the Museum of Jeff Hein. And if I were, then I'd want to do something that's never been done before. No, I don't. I want to do it in the way that's best for the story, because it's not the Museum of Jeff Hein. It's the Museum of Christ. It's just not about the artist. It's not about me. And it's certainly not going to make my career. It's not like I'm painting a subject matter that this country has any respect for. I'm actually literally painting the thing that this country is disgusted by. And if I wanted to be famous, I would be painting something else.
Welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's Andrew Tischler here. Pleasure to have your company in the studio once again for another episode of the podcast. I cannot wait to share this with you. In this episode, I'm talking to Mr. Jeff Hein, based in Utah in the United States. Now, this is Jeff's second appearance on the Creative Endeavour podcast. I really love following Jeff's work, and Jeff actually has his own podcast called The Undraped Artist. Perhaps you've heard of it, perhaps you've seen this. I was even on that podcast a while ago. He does such a fantastic job on his show and really interviews some heavy hitters and some big names. And Jeff himself, I would consider a heavy hitter. It's a real treat to listen to his show. Now, I admire Jeff's work so much. I've been following him for years. If you're not already doing so, make sure you follow him on Instagram and on his website. I will include those links in the show notes, in the description that accompanies this podcast. Now, Jeff specializes in multi-figure painting, huge portraits, biblical scenes. He paints still lifes beautifully. This guy is a master of his craft. I really just love geeking out over his work. He's got such a painterly technique, reminiscent of 19th century masters. I wanted to ask Jeff all about his work and continue that conversation that we started a few years ago when I first had him on about some of the technical aspects of how he does what he does. But also, I wanted to hit him up about some of the things that he's working on today, and also about his podcast specifically. How has this shaped him as an artist? I was surprised to hear the answer. This episode is going to be absolutely jam-packed. But before we jump into it, I just need to take a quick minute and tell you about this episode's sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Now, Rosemary & Co. are the gold standard of artist brushes out there. They make the very best quality paint brushes in the world, in my opinion. And I'm only going to recommend to you what I'm actually using myself here in the studio. Recently, I've been getting into a few different styles and techniques, really enjoying playing with these Series 274 brushes, these little short flat brushes. They've got a beautiful springiness and softness to them, and they create some great blended effects. Now, I'm using these primarily for painting in oils, but they don't only have oil painting brushes, they also have acrylic brushes and watercolor brushes as well. Now, if you want to take your art to the next level, if you want to unlock some new techniques and play with some stuff that maybe you haven't explored before with your paintings, then check them out and you'll see why these are the best brushes in the world. Visit www.rosemaryandco.com. That's rosemaryandco.com, and trust me, your art will thank you for it. And before we jump into the episode, one more thing. I just want to remind you there is a full exclusive video version of this podcast available only at Tisch Academy. That link will be in the description as well. If you want to see Jeff in his studio and me and mine, and as we're talking to each other, my editor's cutting in images and clips and all sorts of things, then check that out by visiting tisch.academy. And there's also a special segment that's going to be only in the video version, and that is a studio tour. Jeff is going to show us around his studio. This is exclusive to the video version. You can find that over on Tisch Academy. All right, I'm excited to share this episode with you. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Here's Jeff Hein and the Creative Endeavour. Jeff Hein, welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast. Real pleasure to have you back here once again for round two. You've been producing an amazing show called the Undraped Artist. I was on there about 2 years ago. I think we just figured out.
I think
Um,
so. Something like that.
it's great to be back in the studio with you once again and talking with somebody else with such a slick setup. We're just just talking about that off camera, but it's
Dude, it's
no,
my honor, man. You're
it's
you're the
awesome to have you
guy,
here.
you're the guy whose footsteps I'm following. I'm trying to be like Andrew Tischler. And I'm not just saying that. That's not
Stop.
dude, you've got it all figured out.
I
Seriously. I was
don't.
talking to a friend of mine about it, and yeah, you just got to put together. No, really. I'm not just saying that. I mean it. So
Mm.
I hope to talk to you a little bit about that too. What how things are working for you and your podcast and all of your other endeavors, right?
It certainly is an endeavor. Well, you're very
Yeah.
kind. You're very kind. I will say this, that I think I was chuckling this morning. I can't remember where I heard it. It was in one of these motivational books, and it's like, what do you get when you motivate an idiot? And you get a motivated idiot. And I think I might just be a motivated idiot, Jeff, because I don't know what my limitations are, and I'm like, oh, this seems kind of cool. Let's just do this. And a lot of my we started having these meetings here in studio, and I met with a bit of a mentor of mine yesterday, and we're starting to call them sticky noodle sessions, where you throw the noodle up against the wall and see what sticks. And I better check myself. I heard that from Thomas Fluharty. You got to throw the noodle against the wall and see what sticks. I said, dude, I love that. So I'm starting to call them sticky noodles. And I think the podcast, the way the business has gone, it's just been one noodle after another that I've just thrown against the wall, just seeing what sticks, dude. So I don't have it figured out, but I guess this is just a process of the figuring. But you've put out a lot of shows, Jeff. Like, I think you recently cracked your, well, no, I think I was episode 120, wasn't I? At the
No,
time.
no. You were probably in the I don't know, in the tens, or I mean somewhere around 40 or something.
Okay,
But
what are
I'm
you up
at
to
I'm at
now?
110 now this week.
110.
I'll post my
Wow.
110th. And it's
Amazing.
been it's been a little over, so it's approximately one a week. I've missed a few weeks for being sick or emergencies. I try really hard to get it every week.
Mm,
So it's 52 episodes a year basically.
that's
But you know what
amazing.
I'm doing now? I'm trying to do two a week.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna start doing 2 a week. I gotta figure out how to pay for it. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because
hmm.
you know how it is. There's no
Oh, yeah.
money in this. I mean, maybe you're making money, but um
No, not off
every bit of
this.
money that the podcast brings in just goes to the editor
Hmm.
and to
Hmm.
other people. So,
Yeah.
but I want to do it because I'm just like you probably are. It's just I'm passionate about it. It's just so cool to be
Well,
able to talk to other artists from around the world on a
right
regular
on.
basis.
Well, that's okay. So that's what I really wanted to ask you about. Let's jump in there because this is something that I found. But how do you feel about, like, you're talking to these artists every single week? What have been some of the benefits from this that you've seen? And one thing I'd really love to know is, has it actually impacted your artwork?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's funny. I was at the Porch Society last year, and this woman came up to me and said, "You've really become a good painter since your podcast started." I was so unbelievably insulted. I'm like, "Oh, dude, that hurt bad. That was below the belt." I don't know what. I don't know how this woman was raised, but somehow she didn't see that as an insult. But I said to her at the
Wow.
time, I was like, I think I painted okay before the podcast started. She's like, well, yeah, you were good, but now you're really good. And I've thought a lot about that. It's been like, I don't know, 9 months since Support Society. And I got to tell you, man, every now and then I think about it because I have to admit, she's not wrong. It's not that I become it's a lot of people may not notice it, but I just went plein air painting yesterday. And that's the thing that I'm really out to figure out is plein air painting, because you've got it in the bag. I don't. I've just,
Oh no, no,
but
no, 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 no.
a lot of artists that I've interviewed, I just envy their ability to just crank out beautiful pieces of artwork in a couple hours outside. It's just mind blowing. And I really want that bad. That's the thing. That's the area where I've grown the most. Now, in my big multi-figure paintings and stuff, I've picked up little things here and there,
Mm.
but you're not going to see a huge difference. But I have grown, but you know how it is. You've been painting over 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know how it is. You plateau. You get to a point where you kind of know the sport, and it's just like incremental growth after that.
Yes.
It's not,
Yeah.
you're not going to be making these huge strides like you probably did in college or wherever
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
studied. Um, so, but the fact that at 50 years old in a month, and many years of plateau, it's pretty surprising how much I have grown. I'm not, I mean, I honestly can't, I don't want to undersell that, So the woman was right. It kind of hurt a little bit because she was insinuating I sucked before, but what are you going to do?
I want to say to that lady right now, love you, but no, no, sorry,
Yeah, I really have
you're
learned a ton though,
wrong.
man. Like
So,
the stupidest stuff, like not stupid, the most simple stuff.
mhm.
Like yesterday I was out painting plein air, and I did two paintings yesterday, and one of them I feel like I nailed it. I never used to nail them.
Mhm.
And I mean that's relative compared to, I nailed it for me, right? Not compared to my guests, half of my guests who would just wipe the floor with me. But uh, one of the things that I brought with me yesterday, one of the pieces of knowledge was when I interviewed Matt Smith.
Mm.
He said that he only uses bristle brushes. He uses like just flat bristles. That's it, period. And I thought, I'm going to try this. And one of the things I noticed about his paintings is that he really shovels on the paint. I mean, it's pretty
It's
thick.
it's really chunky. It's
It's
really
pretty
chunky,
chunky.
isn't it?
Yeah. So I went out there and I've tried all of it. That's the thing. The thing about landscape painting is you got a couple hours, you got to figure out how to lay it on. You don't have time to try stuff. You just got to do it. In the studio,
Mm.
I can try textures, scrape them off, try again, scrape them off. I have all the time in the world, but out there, I haven't, I haven't figured out what my brushstroke looks like in 2 hours. Like how to apply paint in 2 hours and make it as beautiful as possible with this little bit of time and very economic brushwork. So I picked up I just brought out a few of these bristle brushes and just shoveled on the paint. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so right. This is it, man. Forget all these little soft brushes. For me, I mean, it might not work for you or somebody else, but
Mm.
that's the thing. I've been just sort of, there are other artists like T. Allen Lawson, who I interviewed, who he said he brings out color charts with him and just writes. He's got numbers associated with each color swatch on his color chart, and he'll go out there and just do a quick sketch, sometimes just monochromatic if I remember right, and then he'll just write down the number off the color chart. Then he'll bring that. It's basically just it's notes. It's not even colors. It's just notes with numbers that represent colors. And he'll bring that into the studio and he'll be like, okay, that sunset color was number 275 on this particular color chart. It's
What?
very mathematical. Yeah, wild, right? So
Whoa.
it's cool to hear that stuff, but there are certain things like that I just, even though by the time the interview was done, I was like, I'm going to do color charts. It was 5 minutes after the interview. I'm like, nope, it's not my temperament. It's not happening.
Mm.
I'm far too impatient to be that methodical, you know. So not to say I didn't learn anything from him. I learned a ton from him too. It's just that there are certain things that I have to just say, no, I'm just not part of my temperament. And then there are other things that I can totally apply. And
Mm.
I can't even, there's been a lot of stuff, a lot. It's been really awesome. I mean, what's been your experience? Have you had the same experience?
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. And I mean, I drop his name at just about every podcast because I'm
You're going to
just
say
such
Joe
an,
Paquette.
yeah, exactly. I'm just such a fan. Because
Yes, you are. So
Joe,
am I, though.
Joe Paquette's got a way of just of hitting the nail on the head, like tearing your guts out, but at the same time making you feel totally loved. So
Yeah. Yeah. He's been
he's
pretty hard on you a couple times on accident.
no, well, I don't know if
On
it was an
accident.
accident, but it's been welcomed. It's been welcomed. It's been him and artists like Thomas Fluharty have been a huge part of my growth as an artist, and not just in terms of like the skill set with just little bits of knowledge here and there, but in terms of like mindset and motivation. That's been massive as well. So for me, when I'm talking to another artist, particularly somebody like Fluharty, I think that's the thing that weighs the most for me is how they're approaching this thing. You know, taking Fluharty, directly here, like he's the guy that inspired the sketch endeavor when I first started that. Like, you talk to a guy like this, and it's like, where does his energy come from? It's just coming out of his pores, this artistic energy, this passion, this creativity. And he's go, go, go. And he's so animated. And he's just drawing, drawing, drawing. And as he was saying this in the first interview I did with him, it's like, you just got to draw every day, dude. You just got to, you got to go at this thing. And I'm like, far out. Okay, draw every day, draw every day. And I ended up starting the sketch endeavor after speaking to him. Like he didn't say, you got to start this thing. It's going to be called this or whatever. But it was like, wow, I was so inspired from that it changed my point of view. It changed my relationship towards what I was doing. I was seeing he's so passionate about what he's doing. He's so driven. Could I adopt a similar attitude? Because it highlighted for me that I wasn't quite as hardworking, driven, dedicated, and on
This
fire for
guy's
this thing.
more driven than you. You can honestly say that?
Well,
Because you've got to admit, you're not a lazy person. I mean, you are very driven.
okay. Well, okay. So you'll get this, right? Okay, you'll get this. So there was a couple of weeks here that I didn't paint a stitch, not one thing, Jeff. Like
Yeah, but that's because you got a lot on your plate, right?
yeah, but I'm an artist. Painter's got to paint.
I know,
You
but
know,
it's the same for me though. Like there are weeks that go by that I just never touch the canvas. It's frustrating as all get out.
And this is insane. I think people are like, oh, you chuck on the microphone and turn the lights on, you do a show.
Yeah.
The prep that goes into it is gnarly, and so what it calls me to do is go, okay, you need to shift the focus to the art now, and just figure out a way to be able to do that. I'm pleased to say, for the first time in months, last week I got in a full-time painting week. And this week it'll be another
40 hours.
yeah. And this week it'll be another 40 hours at the easel.
What,
And
how many hours are you doing other things though? I mean, are you working an 80-hour week?
most weeks, yeah. But I have yeah, so I get in here, around like and I've been a little bit unwell recently, but I get in here around 4:30 in the morning, between 4:30 and 5. And I've changed up my routine again since the last time we spoke. And then I'll just start working, go home for breakfast, spend a little bit of time with the family, come back, and then
Go home. Go home meaning isn't your studio in your on your property?
so I'm coming to you from Lawrence now. We moved back down to the South Island of New Zealand. So I'm back in
Oh,
my old studio that I had when I used to live down here. I've come back to the old building. So I have a building in the main street of the town that I live in, and my house is 100 yards from the studio. So
oh,
so
that's excellent.
yeah, I miss my wife and my son, but it is nice to have this space just dedicated for art. It's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, so it's been an interesting process, but again, it's an idiot throwing noodles at the wall, just seeing what sticks, right? And I think I think I'm getting to the point where I hesitate to say I've got it figured out. I don't, because I know that I'm headed for a fall as soon as I say, yeah, I got it worked out. Well, how about this? Another spanner gets thrown in the works. But back to you, Jeff, because that's so interesting. From the technical standpoint, I've had a few aha moments like that. But this plein air thing, dude. if you want to get your teeth kicked in or your butt handed to you on a platter, go paint plein air. Like it's a lot harder than people think, right? Tell me though about your setup and maybe a little bit more about how this has been informed by some other people. I'm getting asked all the time about, just from a technical standpoint, what are you using? Okay, so we covered a little bit about brushes. What's your approach to color now when you're out there, and talk us through this one that you nailed. Maybe I could even cut in an image of the painting you're talking about.
Oh no, now it's too much pressure. Well, the equipment, you mean like paint colors and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. What's your approach to palette
The
now?
thing is, I still don't have an approach. This whole thing with the brushes was just yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to plein air paint all year. This is the first time I've been out. This week, I've done six
Wow.
paintings this week, and it's my first six of the year, which is really bad. But I've just been so busy, so I'm only just barely applying some of the things that I've been anxious to try.
Hmm.
So I can't really say that this is my way yet. Um,
Fair enough.
but one of the things I've been doing lately is I'm reducing my palette. I've always had like 27 something colors,
Mm.
and both in the studio and outside the studio, at least in part, I've limited my palette a fair amount. Now, that said, I'll bring in some of those colors if needed. I'm not doing the whole Zoran thing where it's just four colors, period. But I'm at least starting with a smaller palette. And outside, that's been particularly helpful because I don't have to overthink things. It's red, yellow, and blue, basically. And
Totally.
I mean, it's a little more than that, but I can tell you exactly what I used yesterday. I used phthalo green blue, which I love because with Paralin, it makes a really beautiful black. Paralin.
Hmm.
Um, I used vermilion, so I have two reds. Ultramarine blue, cerulean blue. So this doesn't sound like a limited palette at all, does it? It is for me. Um, and then let me see, cad yellow, lemon yellow, not cad yellow, lemon yellow, obviously titanium white, and transparent yellow oxide. So I got about two of each color. Oh, and then the green, I did use some sap green. So I guess it's not that limited. It's like 8 or 9 colors, but that's a lot better than 20 something, for me.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with that. I get so many dang colors out, dude. And I'm still experimenting still at this stage here in the studio. I got out another 5 or 6 colors for this particular horse painting. It's just like I need the violet. What space can I go into here? I'm gonna get out another one. I kind of cringe because I know my students are gonna be like, oh, I gotta buy another one. Like,
Yeah, no
sorry,
kidding. So
sorry.
expensive. Yeah.
It gets that way. It gets that way.
Yeah.
Just want to shout out Eric Silver, by the way. It's just popped into my mind. He was based in Asheville, North Carolina, which now doesn't exist. It looks like. Are you
Jeez.
have you been affected much by these hurricanes? Anything in Utah?
Oh no, no. We're a long way from North Carolina. 2,000 miles.
Wow.
So it's at least I don't know exactly what the miles are, but it's a long way away. Our weather is very different. That's the hurricane region. It's very green, very wet. Where we live is high desert. It's very dry.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and I have friends in North Carolina, and fortunately for them, and for me as a friend, they're all safe. But yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild.
Um, Sorry to bring the tone down there, Jeff.
Yeah, way to make it depressive. Oh, geez, Louise.
I'm breaking all sorts of interviewing rules here. It's terrible. But back to your podcast, like because you started this thing. Well, let me know, like, so this was a bit of a passion project for you, it sounds like. And, you know, I'm wondering now, like, how has this changed we've talked a little bit about how it might have changed your approach to the art side of things, but now in terms of like business side of things, are you getting more ideas about ways to market yourself as an artist and different approaches? Because I mean, I got to say that's one thing I found is like there's so many for every artist, there's another approach that we could apply.
Yeah.
How is this kind of changing your focus direction, or some new things that you're kind of playing with mentally here?
Well, it's probably a disappointing answer, but honestly, as far as marketing myself, I don't think I've picked up much because I'm not really looking for that.
Right.
I've kind of got what I'm doing going, and it's, it should, I'm hoping, if all goes well, that it continue to keep moving forward as far as my painting business.
Mm.
So I'm not really looking for any changes there.
Hmm.
So I've mostly just been after technique. I've been fascinated though by just how many artists, for example, sell things on Instagram and stuff. I mean, I'm doing 10-foot tall painting. You don't buy a 10-foot tall painting off of Instagram, right? Um, but it's still kind of wild. And I'm buying paintings off of Instagram all the time. Um, but yeah, and so it's been fascinating to just learn how other people are doing it, but I haven't really applied it
Hmm.
because I kind of got my thing going.
And your thing right now, like, because you're moving originals, you're doing official portraits, official commissions.
No, I'm really just doing one thing right now.
Oh,
I
tell
guess it
me
has
about
been
it.
a while since we
Yeah,
talked.
yeah, yeah.
So
Talk to me about it.
so probably 15 years ago, I had this vision, and you'll appreciate this being Christian, but I had this vision to paint the whole life of Christ for a public collection because I was
Wow.
doing these paintings of Christ. I've been doing paintings of Christ here and there throughout my whole career, and they'll either go to a church or they'll go. I mean, I've sold actually very few to, they're temples in my case, to my particular faith.
Hmm.
I've sold only a handful for temples, but mostly they go to private collectors. And it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a strange place for a biblical painting to end up.
Hmm.
Not so much for the client. It's great for the client. I'm not opposed to them hanging in their house, but I just wanted them to be in a public space so more people could view them, So I
Hmm.
had this dream to do this, ran it by a few of my clients. One of my clients set up a foundation and earned some money. And basically, we've got this foundation that's paying for the whole life of Christ to be painted in large scale. And then they're going to build a museum for it, dedicated to Christ.
Mind blowing.
Yeah,
That
it's pretty
wow.
cool.
Okay.
So this is a long-term project, So I've quit everything else. I'm turning down most work. If one of my patrons for the foundation wants me to paint their family, yeah, I would do something like that. But I'm really not doing. I haven't been in a gallery since 2008. So the gallery thing has not been part of my business plan for a long time. Um, but I'm not even selling work really, unless it's a little thing. Like I'd sell some of these landscapes or something, and the occasional portrait. I've got a friend who's in politics that I mean, when he ends up needing a portrait, I'll do one for him. But it's going to be really hit and miss. Just stuff that is particularly interesting to me. But for the most part, I'm focusing on this. So, so
Wow.
I'm going to be busy for the now. I'll be 70 probably before. Maybe not. I'd like to get it done in 15 years. So 65 before I can even start thinking about doing something else. You know,
Wow.
doing
Like
something major. I mean,
you're not just saying that. Like you've probably planned this out, charted this out, the amount of work that you want to do, and timing wise, how much you
no, this
can
is
do this.
real. Like,
Yeah,
I
60.
mean, I've
Well,
woke up in the morning. I've woke up a few times panicked, like, oh man, I'm in this. Like, this is my life for next 15 years. Um,
wow.
and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But you know how, well,
Yeah.
maybe, it is. I mean, I'm sure we've all committed to things. It's like getting married. I don't know. Maybe I remember when I got married being like, oh crap, I hope this is the right decision. It's like you get that last minute panic, you know? And 27 years later, I can say it is the right decision. But, it kind
Yeah.
of feels a little bit like that. Like, oh,
Mm.
geez, what have I built here? This is going to be a lot of work.
My panic's
But
slightly different. I wake up panicked thinking, I hope she made the right decision.
yeah, well, that's how it evolves. That's what it evolves into, You start to realize you were the idiot to ever doubt, but no, it's definitely, I wouldn't say that I live in that panic. It's just it's happened, and it's like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But
Mm.
but 95, 99% of the time I live in gratitude. Like this is
Yeah.
the opportunity of a lifetime, not just financially, it's not going to change my life much because I'm getting paid market value, right? It's not like all of a sudden I'm set. No, it's not going to change my life financially. But, you know, to be able to someday walk in a museum devoted to Christ and to see my work as the main collection, I mean, dude,
Mm.
what a freaking opportunity and blessing that is, you know?
It's yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's mind blowing. I mean, this has got to be the goal, right? For a lot of artists. I mean, I used to flick through the books, my art books as a kid, and just go, you know what? All I got to do is meet a Medici, and I'm set. Just have a
Well, I have to have a
patron.
lot of Medicis to pay for this. There's not just one. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like the patronage used to be. I mean, this was an old school model. You would have a few patrons, and they'd be commissioning the work for this or that. And back in the past, right, Renaissance times, it was mostly, religious institutions that were commissioning a lot of this type of art, and that's how we have a lot of these paintings now, because they were going to the church. This is wow, what an extraordinary opportunity, Jeff. That's unreal, man. Absolutely unreal. Congratulations, and what a challenge too. Like, talk about a pressure gig. You're painting God. You're painting God, dude. So you better get it right.
Yeah, I've been begging him to come down and show me what he looks like because everyone keeps criticizing my decisions on it. So, but he's not agreed to it yet.
So how, okay, well, on that, so I mean, I know we come at this, we're probably 90% aligned on most things here, but I mean, we don't need to get into that side of things. But I've got a faith, you've got a faith, but it's interesting because I look at depictions of Christ. I mean, we see it in art where we know, like, of a bunch of famous paintings from the past. How do you land on an idea of what he looks like? And do you find any live models to say, hey, bro, you kind of look like Jesus to me. Jump in the studio. Let me paint you from life. Like, what's your approach there?
This is really easy. I paint him not literally, but at least generally to look like me. Like, I know that sounds crazy, and it's not a I'm certainly not elevating myself or my face to some sort of divine level or anything. What I'm saying is that if I were Asian, I'd paint him Asian. If I were black, I'd paint him black. If I were Muslim, I'd paint him Muslim. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. I'm a Scandinavian, British, German guy with a 10% Jewish blood in me, and he's going to look like me because that's what I see in the mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Italians painted him, he looked like he was an Italian. When
Mm-hmm.
Scandinavians paint him, he looked like he's Scandinavian. And so it doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, what he looks like only matters to the degree that it doesn't get in the way of the message behind the painting, right? If he's a distraction, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But as a painter, it does matter because I got to live with this thing for 15 years, and I want to see something that I can relate to. I want to see something that looks like something similar to what I see when I look at my wife and kids, right? All the people that are part of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say me, I mean family. Like, I want him to look like family. That's probably a better way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, but man, people are critical of that.
Well,
People are sure they know what he looks like. They're so sure. And it's so funny when I post something, how many people are critical. And I'm like, just loosen up, man. I don't claim to know.
mm,
It's just, what matters is that, again, that whatever face I choose, is something that is meaningful to me as the artist and something that's familiar. That's the most important thing. Not even meaningful. Meaningful, actually, I scratch that. Meaningful has nothing to do with it. Familiar to me as an artist. So like my kids and my wife and my brothers and sisters and my mother and my father. Um, and then other than that, as long as he's in my opinion, attractive enough to be comfortable to the average person and not so attractive, he looks like a GQ model, strong enough that he represents grandeur, but not so strong that his whole priority is being in the gym 24/7 instead of preaching his word, right? Like it's, there are certain details that are obviously important, but so much of it isn't though. Right. And his race, frankly, is irrelevant. Like I don't, to me, it just doesn't matter except to the degree that he is comfortable to the person giving up 15 years of his life to paint him. Right. And what comfortable to me is he looks like my family. So that's how I see it.
It's really, yeah. Okay. It's really interesting. Oh man, I'm showing my biblical illiteracy here. There is a section that kind of described him in a way. I believe it could even be Isaiah 53. Yeah. Having a look, not so that we would desire him, so he wasn't saying he wasn't particularly, good looking, but there was a, I'm gonna stop myself here. There was because I'm gonna butcher scripture and I don't want to do that. But you know what I mean. I think you're approaching this the right way. I wouldn't do it. I would, because I wouldn't want to take on this pressure gig. But I love the way you're approaching it, in terms of this familiarity, because it's got to be like a heartfelt recognition. I recognize, so you're almost saying, I recognize this as a representation of the divine and, the sinless man who walked a perfect life and was fully man, fully God, right? But then you're also recognizing that divinity in the people that he's placed in your life. I love that. And this is kind of a reflection of that. It really feels like from what you're saying. Wow. It's really extraordinary. So talk to me a little bit about the process then of how, because one thing I love are some of the biblical stories. So this will have like depictions of Christ himself, but would there be, also some of these other fantastic scenarios? Like you have one here on your website. Let me pull this up. And I'm just pulling it up here on the screen for the people watching the video version, which of course is officially on Tish Academy. They're going to see this image that I'm pulling up right now. But I love this. This is Raising of the Daughter of Jairus.
Oh gosh, that thing is ancient.
Dude,
I did that in
love
2003.
This. I love 2003. Dude,
that
this
was
is
like
over.
my fifth painting ever.
Stop.
No,
okay,
I kid you not.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
okay, no, hang on. No, hang on. Now I'm really offended by what that lady said. I'm going to be even more offended for you, because that lady's like, oh, you didn't know what you were doing before. It's like,
no,
shut
it really
up.
was. Other than like, model sessions in college, okay. Right?
I'm going to shout out my buddy Mike. Okay, so there's only one artist who I've ever been able to share a studio with, right? And his name's Mike Norris. He's a sculptor, and he also makes beautiful little models and dioramas and stuff. And so he's from the UK. He's now based in New Zealand and in the studio with me. And so he's on one side of the studio, I'm on the other. It's a big building, big room. And he came over because Mike will often sit in this chair for me to focus the cameras, get all the lighting right. I get it right on Mike first, and then it's like, okay, cool. You go back to what you're doing. Thanks for the lighting test. He's sitting here looking at your painting. You know what he tells me? He's like, far out. It looks like a Victorian era painting. It's and it really does. The drapery, the glow coming off the shawl that she's draped in is just stunning. And the the emotion that you've captured in those faces. So again, just want to shout you out here, man, because this is a beautiful piece. So what would be, so yeah, would you take on some of these extra biblical pieces, and if so, what are some
Oh,
of the
I'll be
other
painting that
ones?
story again. That's one of my
Perfect.
favorite stories. And
Awesome.
the reason being because I nearly died, from cancer.
Yeah.
So that story is really meaningful to me. And also the way that her mother is clutching her and the look on the father's face. I also have a kid who has epilepsy and I've seen him seize and it's just torture. And like, I feel like, um, I mean, I haven't experienced what it's like to be the mother, but I saw my mother's eyes when I was sick, right? And she'd literally cry herself to sleep every night for a year. And so I don't know, that painting is just, and now that as a father and having seen my kids suffer, and it's like that story hits home hard, right? It's like I've lived at least the father and the kid, and really seen the anguish of my own mother in a situation similar to that. So and of course I need to paint that painting again. It's just such a significant story.
Yeah.
In short though, you kind of started to ask, like, I think you were asking what stories I'm going to do. I pulled out 48 stories.
Wow.
I think it was 48, but a lot of them are just not good paintings. It's like, I'm not going to paint things like, um, and maybe some people will disagree with this, but like Christ teaching in the temple when he was like a youth.
Hmm.
It's just, it's just not that interesting to look at, right? I'm going to go for most of the healing stories, the really dramatic healing stories, because those really hit home to me and they're moving to me for the reasons I explained.
Hmm.
And then obviously the key stories. I've already done the crucifixion, obviously the resurrection, the creation. I'm going to do
Well, hang on.
his birth.
Creation.
Yeah, well, God created the earth, right?
How on okay, whoa. Pause. How on earth would you depict that? That
I
is
don't know, man. I'll
incredible.
let you
Like,
know when I figure it out.
what do those thumbnail sketches look like?
I have no idea. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I'm pretty sure that'll be one of them. And then, all the key stories, the baptism, the birth, second coming probably.
Mhm.
But then most of the ones in the middle will be the more dramatic stories, the ones that make good pictures. So a lot of the healing stories, some of the parables, stuff like that. So, and I've narrowed it down to 29.
Mhm.
And the foundation is counting on 24 minimum, or 25 minimum. I say 24 because I finished one. 25 minimum. And then I'm hoping to do all 29. So we'll see how it goes.
And you mentioned a little something about the scale. Like, so some of these paintings are enormous.
All of them
Right.
are. They're all 10 feet tall. That's the height. So what I hope is, I don't know if you've seen the what is it called? The Spanish Society Museum in New York,
I've
where
heard
they
of
have
it.
all the Soroyas.
Yeah. The room is Royce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Incredible.
it's all the Soroyas are the same height and they just go around the room. And it's not, I mean, that's sort of an inspiration for keeping them all the same height, although they'll be hung separately. It won't be quite like the Soroya Museum. The Soroya Museum, the way I remember, it's been a few years since I've been there, but it almost felt like a comic strip in that they were just almost touching like each painting. So you're just moving through time of the history of Spain.
Yeah, it's
Mine will
an
be
amazing
framed and
series.
separated by, at least a few feet, 10 feet between them or something. But I want them all around at or close to 10 feet so that it does feel like the timeline of Christ's life.
So these Soroya paintings are. I'm glad you mentioned that. I haven't thought about these works for quite some time. You're saying these are 10 feet tall. Some of them
No,
are
no, no. The Soroya ones might be bigger. I don't know. But my point is they're all the same.
they're all the same.
The way
So
I remember is it's like a comic strip going around
yeah,
the room.
that's
It's
right.
like,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right. So if you've got a height dimension of that, like some of these, I imagine are going to be some are long, some are going to be portrait, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Like,
So 13 feet is my maximum width. So I built these two
whoa.
easels just for the project. And
Of
one
course you did.
easel,
Of course you
one,
did.
yeah, one easel holds a canvas that's 10 feet tall by 8 feet wide.
Mhm.
And the other one holds a canvas that's 10 feet tall by 13 feet wide. Now, technically, the way or the way these easels are designed, I can actually do a 20-foot tall painting, but I'm not gonna because I wouldn't be able to see the whole painting at once. It would half of it would be draped behind the easel. It's hard to explain. The easel is designed like it's got a roller on the top and bottom, and the canvas is stretched on two sides and actually goes around like this. The canvas can be pulled over the roller and back down the backside and just spin all the way around this whole thing. And that way I can lift the canvas up with just one hand and I can paint the feet and I can lower it all the way down and the bottom will wrap under the roller and back up the backside. And then I can work on the top of the canvas.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's on my Instagram. If you go to Jeff Hein,
All right, we'll pull it up.
Jeff Hein Studio, there's a clip of me loading a canvas on it and showing how the thing moves around.
So you've pulled up on the screen here for the people that just listening to the podcast. You pulled up on the screen here your Instagram. You're going to show us this. I can't even
Yeah.
picture it. It's so out there. But wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
So this
let's
isn't
go.
my art Instagram. This is my
Studio,
this is the stuff I build. Jeff Hein Studio. So I build a lot of stuff.
dude.
And like up on the top are me remodeling my bathroom in the studio, building cabinets, easels that I've built, and so on.
Oh
This is
man.
my thing I'm sitting at right now. My
Oh, click on that for me.
yeah, well, it's actually grown quite a bit. There's a lot more to it now.
That's unreal.
And then things like this is this is the thing that I use for making sure I don't breathe solvents. So it just automatically opens when you put your hand by it.
Hang on. Okay, hang on. Let me
Have you not
explain this.
seen have you not seen this channel, man?
No, I haven't. Let me explain this for the people watching. It's got it's obviously got some sort of sensor on it. So the minute you
Yeah,
hover your brush over to the solvent, the lid opens.
right.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's all made out of steel, powder coated, and then obviously it's got a servo and a microchip in it.
And you
Um,
built that yourself. You made that yourself.
yeah, yeah. And then I've got my whole van that I put together. I never did finish posting all the van stuff, but I built a van for plein air painting. But anyway, so here is, let's see, the easel is down here. Okay, this is it right here, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So we have to watch quick. That's kind of quick, but
Oh, what?
yeah,
Wow.
crazy, right?
It's
So it just
insane.
rolls. So you open it because I can put a canvas on both sides. So I can put there's actually right now there are two canvases on it. I have two paintings going. And
Wow.
and then the way let me show you. Right here is how you load the canvas. So there is why is that not playing? That not video?
I think that looks like a still, but that's amazing, mind blowing.
Yeah, it does look
Let me
like a
just
still.
explain this as well for the people watching. So this easel that Jeff has just pulled up here is literally 10 feet tall, and the canvas is going up and over a roller at the top, and then if you adjust the side, it will go down under a roller at the bottom. Is it
Yeah.
okay for a painting to bend like that around these
Yeah, think
rolls?
about it. You
Yeah,
roll them
yeah,
up
of
to store
course.
them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so a
And it's a
fresh,
4-inch roller. It's not a small roller. So it's
yeah.
not like it's pinching. And the
Wow.
hardest thing, I tell everyone this because it's just kind of mind blowing. But you see the bracket that holds the canvas stretched?
Yes.
That was the hardest part of the whole design. This huge giant easel. And that right there is what hung me
Wow.
up. Because if you think about it, something people wouldn't think about. When you roll over the top of that roller with the canvas, you can't further stretch or let slack build up. So whatever is holding the canvas it has to follow the contour of the roller and not add or subtract tension. It has to maintain the exact amount of tension as it goes over that 4-inch roller. So I had to design a bracket that holds the canvas that doesn't increase or decrease tension on the canvas because that would be bad for the painting if I'm constantly stretching and slacking and stretching and slacking.
How the heck
So
do you do that? My my
I remember
brain
sitting
just
at the
does
dinner
not
table for two
just
hours trying to figure out that bracket, and works great. There's no added tension as you go over the roller, but it was a beast trying to figure it out. But if you saw it today, if I now that I show you it, if I showed you the bracket, you'd be like, well, yeah, obviously. But it didn't seem obvious at the time. It was like, oh man,
dude, I mean,
it's
it taking
really.
what took you 2 hours at the dinner table would take me 20 years, and I still wouldn't
Nah,
have
I
it
don't know
figured
about that,
out.
dude. You're pretty brilliant, dude.
No, 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 no,
But
not like this, Jeff. No, no, no. This is next level. This really, I love your approach to problem solving here, and how you're making these different things that just make your life as an artist even better. I mean, we did talk a little bit about the van in the last episode that we did, where you were a guest on the Creative Endeavour last time. Um, we talked a little bit about that because, there a lot of that van was part of the necessity of your particular, medical issues and stuff. That
hmm
you needed something that would give you a level of comfort that you wouldn't you wouldn't have in an ordinary situation. What you've got
right.
going on is extraordinary, and so to be able to face that challenge, you're having to come up with these solutions. That's but it's so inspiring watching how you get through this. But I really appreciate though that the size of your space is pretty impressive. It seems like we're in similar sized buildings. How big is this space that you're in, and how tall is the
Um,
ceiling?
so the ceilings start at 14 feet and then they go down to 10 or that sorry 12 feet on the one other end.
Right, right.
So where I paint, the lowest point is about 13 feet.
Hmm.
And then on the opposite side where it's only 12 feet, that's where I have my shop and all that other stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but there's a bar that I capped it at 10 feet because there is a bar that goes across my studio that the easel needs to slide under that is about 10'3".
Wow.
So I had to
Okay.
make sure that it could go under. And I figured, geez, Louise, man, I can't imagine painting taller than 10 feet consistently anyway.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of buildings. Once you put a frame on that, you're talking maybe as much as 12 feet, at least 11.
Mm.
And then you need 2 feet underneath it, 2 feet above it. Now we're up to, 15-foot ceilings just to hang the painting. So it seemed like a rational place to stop anyway.
Wow. So many directions I want to go in now. Like my
See, this is why you
mind
don't prepare, man. You never have any trouble.
my mind is literally blown right now. It's okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
funny.
So they're going to have to build a building specifically for this, right?
Or buy an old building. I mean, there's in Salt Lake, we have a lot of really beautiful historic buildings. It's possible they could buy something historic and renovate it,
Mhm.
but most of the people involved want to build something.
And so this has got to be part of the plan. At what point does work begin? They say, okay, when he gets to 15 paintings, we're gonna start, you know,
No,
digging the foundation.
it's more. So 2033 is the 2000th anniversary of Christ's death.
Wow.
So the goal is to have the collection hanging by then. Not the whole collection, but at least enough of the collection that it actually seems complete. And then I'll still work on it from there. So hopefully by 2033 there'll be at least a dozen paintings. But a dozen paintings at 10 feet tall is not a small amount.
No, no.
Yeah.
How
So
how
it'll be a good collection.
how quick? I want to know this, and I'm sure that several others would want to know this too. Like, so a painting that's 10 foot by 13 foot. I guess it would depend on what it is, but how long are we taking for one of these paintings?
It really, most of the work comes down to the number of figures because that's the most time consuming part.
Right.
And it's not even just painting the figures, it's finding the characters, um, working with models. It's just the tedious part. The rest of it is like, well, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it because I have to build maquettes and stuff too. So I guess the landscape takes a lot. But once I build a maquette, that represents the house or the building or the whatever the space is that they're occupying,
Mm-hmm.
then it's done. Then the hard work is done. But for the figures, like I'm working on a 12 figure one right now. I think it's 12. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12.
Mm-hmm.
I'm halfway through the painting and I still haven't found four of the people. It's just tedious trying to find the right characters, and it can be time consuming. So, and then, you got to work with the models and you got to do sketches of the models and you got to you make costumes for the models. And it's just a lot of work. But, there'll be some paintings like the crucifixion was maybe 4 months. It took, I had it in my studio for a year, but it was really only about 4 months of work because it's only one figure. So it just depends on how complex it is. So I'm hoping to average around 9 months of painting.
Mm-hmm.
That's my hope. It's pretty ambitious though. So for me, I mean, there are some artists that could do it faster, but for me, it's pretty ambitious.
Wow.
So
Do we have any information at all on how long it took Joaquin Sorolla to do his
well, he's a
works?
much looser painter than I am.
He
So
is. He's using a
yeah,
shovel, I think.
yeah. So it's kind of apples and oranges. And he does paint in layers, but not in the same way I do, in that my process is layer oriented. I mean, it's all
Mm-hmm.
about the layers. If Sorolla painted in layers, from what I can tell studying his paintings, it was because he wasn't done the day before, right? So he adds more paint.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas mine is a deliberate stacking of layers to create a certain effect, which is inspired by artists like Rembrandt. It's a very different process.
Yeah.
So I couldn't paint as fast as him, even if I were as skilled as him, which I'm not. But even if I were, my process doesn't allow it. So, and I want this process because I studied Rembrandt for many years because I just felt like it needed to be a classical process. And I have thought back, like maybe these should have been contemporary. Maybe it should have been a whole new way of looking at these stories in a contemporary way, like modern colors and shapes and abstract elements. But I keep going back to no, I made the right decision because I genuinely mean this. It's not about me making a difference, or it's not. I'm really not concerned about this museum being the museum of Jeff Hein, right? And if I were, then I'd want to do something new and edgy and that's never been done before. No, I don't. I want to do it in the way that's best for the story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not the Museum of Jeff Hein, it's the Museum of Christ. So, or whatever we name it, but it won't be Jeff Hein. So, and Rembrandt's way of painting, in my opinion, is the best way to illustrate the story. I don't want people to be distracted by all that. I would kill to be able to paint these stories in a style like, I mean, obviously I'm not in this particular style, but oh shoot, what's her name? Zoe Frank.
Oh,
Like
amazing.
a whole
Yeah.
series of, she might be offended by this, but I don't mean it. But a whole series by a contemporary artist like Zoe Frank in her style. That'd be really cool, but it'd be more of a Zoe Frank museum, right?
Right.
This is not that. I want it to be about the story and the painting. If I succeed, the painting will be so good that it gets out of the way of the story. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's like if you're a
Absolutely, it does.
filmmaker, they say about lighting people
Mm-hmm.
and camera people in film. If they're really, really good lighting people and camera people, then the audience never knows they're part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
If they suck at it, everyone knows that someone's shining a spotlight when it should be windows, or everyone knows they suck at their job. But if they're really good at it, they're invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Absolutely.
that's the way I look at it. I want to be so good that I'm invisible and that the stories are the most maximally moving and people aren't distracted by the the flash and the flare of contemporary expression.
That adds a whole nother layer of challenge to this process.
Oh, it's brutal, dude. I feel a
What?
lot of pressure. Yeah.
So it's trying to like how to, yeah. Okay, so Yeah, I just don't know how you would do that because, naturally people are going to go, well, you're Jeff Hein. I'm aware that I'm looking at a Jeff Hein painting. So you've added another layer of pressure to this to make the paintings so good that Jeff is completely out of the way. I just don't know how that happens. But
Yeah, and it's
I
obviously I'm not delusional. It's obviously my name's going to be on the paintings.
of course.
Obviously, there's going to be recognition if they're done well.
Hmm.
Um, but it's going to be minimal, right? It's just not about the artist. It's not about me. So, and it's certainly not going to make my career. It's not like I'm painting a subject matter that this country has any respect for. I'm actually
Yeah.
literally painting the thing that this country is disgusted by. And at least 50% of this country is disgusted by this subject, which is
Mm.
so if I wanted to be famous, I would be painting something else,
Yeah.
you
The,
know?
the the people that aren't interested in this sort of thing, they're not listening to the podcast right now. We lost them in the first 15 minutes, I think.
Yeah, sorry
But
about that, man.
no, not at all, not at all. It's actually a place that I do like to go, and it's something because it's my favorite subject. Like the minute you come to Christ, the minute you become a Christian, it is the most important thing in your life. It has to be. If it's not, what is that thing that's more important to you? Other than your relationship with God, what is that thing? Well, you point to that thing, and I can tell you that's an idol. So for me, and we're not to give into idolatry, right? And so for me, this has to be the most important thing, and it's difficult walking in a world where you're right, man. I mean, the country's disgusted by this, the world's disgusted by this, and New Zealand's very much the same way. And this isn't a race issue either. Christ is for everybody. And it says in the word, we are in the world, but we're not of the world. I'm just starting to figure out what that means, you know. But I think it's extraordinary, Jeff. Your passion and your conviction here, and yes, from a economic standpoint, I think even just to find a patron, somebody that would support this sort of idea. Amazing. What I'm excited about more though is that you've got this worked out to the point where you get to do the thing that you really want to do and say what you really want to say. This is going to bring a whole nother layer of meaning and purpose to your life. That's something I just, that's extraordinary. That's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. I really hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We'll get right back to Jeff Hein. I just want to take a brief break here and tell you about this podcast sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Now, many years ago, I made the switch to Rosemary & Co. brushes, and I'm so glad that I did. One thing that I'm looking for as an artist is consistent, high quality. It's got to be consistent. I got to know that an Eclipse brush is going to do what the last Eclipse brush did. That when I pull out one of those bristle daggers, it's going to perform just like the last one. I'm looking for consistent, high quality. Rosemary & Co. have that in spades. Now, one thing that they have going for them, and one of the reasons that their quality is just top notch, is they've been making the best brushes out there for over 40 years. If you want to take your art to the next level, find out what many professional artists around the world are raving about, then go to rosemaryandco.com. You'll be so glad you did. It's going to unlock so much for you in the world of painting, and maybe even you'll be able to explore some techniques that only previously you only thought, were just a dream. But maybe it'll just give you that little bit of an edge. I tell you, even today, as I explore more of their range, it's unlocking more and more stuff with oil painting for me. It's quite something. So check it out. Your art will thank you for it. Trust me. Visit www.rosemaryandco.com and find out what the professionals are using. All right, let's jump straight back into this conversation with Jeff Hein. Let's geek out about the process a little bit. Okay, so you mentioned something about the layering process of your paintings. I I'd love to hear more about that, particularly with your approach to things like underpainting, and then what mediums are you using? Could you walk us through the process, almost step by step? Give me as much detail as you feel comfortable with. But I'm really, and I just want to add one more thing to it before you leap into this. What I really appreciate about paintings, and I wish I could see some of these in person. I've only ever seen your work on screens, unfortunately. But I do get some indication from looking at your work as to the surface quality. And I love surface. I love a painting that feels like a painting. I haven't quite got there yet with my surface quality. It seems like you've got a way of balancing that realism. I mean, good night. I still come back to this portrait of this. There's this portrait of this lady that you've done on your website. Oh, dang it! I had it here a minute ago. Boom! It's got the brilliant blue light and
Oh yeah,
just
the cold. Yeah.
the warm and cool in this, and the layering of the paint, and just the painterly quality of it. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. I still love how loose it is. So walk me through the process here of how you're building these things up.
Well, I mean, I'll give you as much detail as I can, but the reality is every time I step up to the canvas, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So I feel like I'm
Wow.
kind of reinventing the wheel,
Hmm.
you know? And I'm constantly experimenting. So whatever I say today might be a little bit different tomorrow. But in general, while I'm experimenting, there's always sort of a nucleus to my process that never really moves. And then I just sort of revolve around it in a way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, and that nucleus is something I learned from Patrick Devonis a long time ago, who was actually one of the guests on my podcast. This awesome Swiss artist who lived in Utah for a time. We were talking once, and he's a brilliant technician,
Hmm.
and he taught me this principle about transparent opaques. And it is what it is that, how do I put this? So the beautiful thing about oil paint is that, in my personal opinion, and in his, I think, is that you can create depth with oil paint because the properties of oil paint that are unique to oil paint that you can't with any other medium. And I mean, there might be some crossover with some other mediums, but I don't believe they're quite as good as oil. And that's by exploiting the transparency and opacity of the medium,
Hmm.
those two extremes. And the way that you do it is by sort of mimicking what happens in nature by using the characteristics that are present and relative to the opacity and transparency. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that transparent paint, because it absorbs light, and obviously all paint's going to reflect some light, but the more transparent it is, the more light is absorbed.
Hmm.
The by absorbing light, it's the closest you'll ever get to actually having the absence of light. So if I were to look at a ball on a table and it's casting a shadow on the table, right down underneath the ball where it's the absolute darkest, that's practically the absence of light,
Hmm.
because that's a three-dimensional form sitting on a table. It's not a picture, it's a real thing. So if you see shadow, it's not a different color, right? It's literally absence of light. So how do you mimic the absence of light on a two-dimensional surface? Well, you use a paint that absorbs light, because if it absorbs light, it's the closest thing you're ever going to get to it not bouncing back into your eye and it not existing at all.
Wow.
Does that make sense? So
Kind of,
what you
yeah.
do is, if you can very carefully make sure that your opacity and your transitions from opaque to transparent are absolutely consistent with your transition from light to dark, and make them perfectly aligned, then you'll get maximum three-dimensionality. So for example, if you have a 50% gray value on your subject, when you paint it, you want it to be 50% transparent, 50% opaque. If you have a 75% gray, you want it to be 75% that would be 75% transparent, 25% opaque,
Hmm.
right? And if you can follow that gradient very, very closely, it's never going to be perfect. But if you can get as close to perfect as possible, you're going to maximize the illusion of three dimensionality. Because as you move into the shadows, you're going to start absorbing more and more light, which is going to sort of mimic the absence of light, which is what reality is, right?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. My brain is just going, wait, what? So what the heck would you use to absorb the light? What colors are absorbing light?
Well, any transparent color. So transparent colors, a lot of people think that they're, I know you don't, but a lot of people think that they're colors you can see through. In other words, if you just thin it with enough oil and
Mhm.
you can kind of see through it, it's now transparent. No, that's not a transparent color. Transparent colors are actually, they're actually pigments where each particle of the pigment is like a shard of stained glass. Like each particle is literally transparent or translucent.
Mhm.
And so if you were to stack, let's say you had like a sheet of blue glass, okay, that's about 50% gray. It's like a cobalt color,
Mhm.
right? And then but it's very translucent, okay? If you were to stack that cobalt glass on top of each other, 50 layers thick, it would get darker and darker and darker,
That's right.
right? Eventually, it would be just really deep, deep, deep dark blue.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. And that's what's happening in the pigment. And that's why transparent colors are generally very, very dark
Mhm.
because they're tiny, for lack of a better description, they're tiny, tiny shards of stained glass stacked on top of each other.
Mhm.
And they're getting progressively darker and darker and darker. Whereas an opaque color, no, you only see the top layer of dust or particles
Mhm.
because it's all bouncing back into your eye. But
Mhm.
with transparent colors, no, the color's soaking and going or the light is going through the color all the way to the bottom and then bouncing back up through all that paint
Yeah.
back into your eye.
Yeah.
And by the time it comes back out, you've lost a lot of the light,
That's right.
right? And
Mhm.
so that's that absorbency. You've trapped the light in there. And by trapping the light, it's the closest thing you'll ever get to eliminating the light or creating the absence of light, which maximizes the illusion of form. And when I discovered it when I was taught this by Patrick Devanis, and in a way, sort of do have to discover it for yourself because it takes some practice to figure out how to really do it and make it work.
Mhm.
Um, man, my paintings just started like feeling like they could walk right off the canvas. I mean, when I compare a
Awesome.
portrait that I do today to a portrait I did in more of a 19th century sort of Bouguereau way of painting,
Mhm.
I mean, I was never a Bouguereau, don't get me wrong, but like there's the Rembrandt way of painting, which is what I'm describing in my opinion. I mean, Rembrandt's sort of a mystery to everybody, but I feel like he understood this for sure. Um, there's you compare that to um, an alla prima painter today, a portrait that's done alla prima,
Mhm.
which is generally to do alla prima, you generally have to work opaque because your
Mhm.
shadows there's not enough paint to cover.
Mhm.
So you compare that to that, and an alla prima painting every time will look significantly flatter in person. They look great on Instagram,
Mhm.
but if you compare something done this way in person to something done more alla prima, not using this principle in person, it's night and day. One is flat, the other looks like you could reach out and and literally like pat the back of their head. Like it's so three-dimensional feeling
Yeah.
um in
Wow.
comparison. That's one of the frustrating things, not to get way off topic, but about the world we live in now where everything is digital. It's like these things don't come across on the internet at
No.
all, right? Because
Yeah.
a screen is always flat and
Of
there's no
course.
transparency, opacity in a screen.
Of course. It makes
Yeah,
terrible paintings look better, and it makes really good paintings look a little worse. You know,
it does.
it's kind of a leveling effect it has, right? Um, but how cool that we're gonna have an opportunity to go and see a bunch of these works in the flesh. And so, you know, yes, I'm sure you're gonna post about it, but that there's a
Yeah.
place to actually go is awesome. Okay, so back to the transparent colors. So one of the a paradigm shift for me was using lead white. And starting to introduce that into my process. It was titanium. I got a lot of chalkiness in my mixes, my brighter passages that would turn pastel the minute the titanium hit it. It would just ruin a delicate effect because of this opacity, right? But
Hmm.
Kremenetz white, lead carbonate, um, it allowed this transparency to be maintained. It also allowed me to create more volume. So I'm assuming here this is something that you'd be using, right?
No, I want more
Wow.
opacity.
You want more opacity in the brightness.
Yeah,
So,
because it's white, right? So white is
okay.
100% or 0% gray. So it's got to be as opaque as possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Rembrandt probably didn't have titanium white, but
Mm-mm.
I don't have in my, I mean, I don't know what you're doing. And
Neither do
so I
I.
obviously can't, no, but I mean, I can't comment on why you're getting this chalkiness. But from my
Yeah.
experience in years of teaching, most of the time when something is chalky, and again, this may not be the case for you at all. I would never presume to teach you how to paint. You're a master painter already, but most of the time when I see my students do it, it's not the lights that are it's not the lights that make the painting look chalky. It's the lights next to the darks. It's like, and
Mm,
I've used this analogy many times, so it's people have probably heard it, but my wife has this beautiful warm skin,
mhm,
and I put mine next to her, and mine looks gray, my skin. And hers is just like almost yellow, not a jaundice way, just beautifully warm, right?
mhm,
And but she can't wear certain yellows because
mhm.
all of a sudden now her yellowish skin looks like a dingy, dirty yellow next to a yellow shirt, right? She's got to avoid certain colors. So the problem often with many people isn't the white, it's what you're putting next to the white. And it's making the
Ah,
mixes in your lights look pasty.
mhm.
But if you look at a Bouguereau painting, man, his colors, they're just pearlescent, but he used white like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it was just his skin was like almost monochromatic. I saw
Mm,
the satyrs and the nymph. I think that's what's something like satyr and the nymph or
mhm,
something
mhm.
in the Met, and I couldn't believe how white the skin was. Um, and but the shadows perfectly accentuated all the all of the good qualities of color that were the subtle colors in that white. The very subtle color perfectly accentuated it instead of killing it, graying it, making it muddy looking. So I don't know, but I haven't had any trouble with titanium white. In fact, like I said, I want it to be as opaque as possible.
Mhm.
I actually find lead white frustrating because I paint thick
Right.
and I can't get enough. I go through a tube. I literally, when I did a workshop once and all I had was lead because I forgot my paint, and someone gave me a big old 225 milliliter tube of lead white. In one portrait, I went through the entire tube. One portrait, just a head, a huge tube. It was like this big. I went
Yeah.
through the whole tube.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it just didn't have enough body and it didn't have enough to it. It was too translucent. I couldn't get those lights to just pile up. Um, so for me, it seems to be working. And I have tried
Oh,
it
it
with
is.
lead. It's
It
just not
is.
enough
Yeah.
pop. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Do you
look,
paint fairly thin?
initially I do, and then I start to lay in some real thickness. And one thing I've been trying to do, and again, just geeking out about surface quality. When I'm in a museum, a bit like you're describing Bouguereau there. When I'm in a museum, looking at old masters, I I just marvel at their surface and how they got these brush strokes with volume. And it's like for so long I've been scrubbing at the canvas, poking at it with these little bitty brushes and thin little bits of paint, and so now I've started laying down the paint with a bit more gusto and just going, no, just make a damn statement, bang, just do it. And so this is something I'm really forcing myself out of the comfort zone. But I got to say that for volume of paint, just pushing just sheer material, the lead has helped. Um, And also maybe because I'm a little bit heavy-handed with my approach to tone, that I've just gotten, probably previously too much of the titanium white out, but getting more of the lead out. And I will mix it with titanium and kind of go for, sometimes my mixing white is just like a 50-50 combination of those two. But I found it's been able to give me the volume that I'm looking for. So, because I want to see a structured brush mark, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And here's the thing, everyone's different.
Yeah.
Like I said about oh shoot, now I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, the guest I had in the podcast, I said earlier um
Devonis?
that there are certain things. No, it was dang it, the one who does the color charts. Now I'm drawing a blank. I said his name,
T.
T. Allen
Allen
Lawson.
Lawson. Yeah, Lawson. Yeah.
It's like I said with him, what he does is brilliant, but it doesn't work for me. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
for
It's like
sure.
so everyone that listens to what I'm saying should take it with a grain of salt. You gotta
Right,
you
right.
gotta try everything
Mhm,
and see what works with the way you move, the way you say you're heavy-handed. You have other mannerisms in the way you make marks. You have natural inclinations to make certain aesthetic decisions,
mhm,
whether that's genetic or nurture, who knows, but it doesn't matter because it's what you are, right?
mhm, mhm,
So every artist kind of has to try these things and go, okay, you know what? Lead white works better for the way I tend to paint.
mhm.
Um, and for me, titanium is the one, you
Yeah.
know.
Right on, man.
But I will say this, the people who paint most like Rembrandt that I know of living today use titanium.
Wow.
Stephen Assail uses titanium.
Wow.
I mean, if I remember right, I mean, I'm 90% sure, 99% sure he uses titanium. He did it at the workshop. I had him here for a workshop and he was using titanium. Um, I'm almost, I'm, I'd be curious if Odd Nerdrum, I'm going to have him on my podcast in a couple weeks. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure he uses titanium too.
Amazing.
Um,
Yeah.
but that one I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting in the comments if people knew, but I'll find out in a couple weeks anyway.
Well, let me know. Yeah, he'd be an interesting one to talk to, right? Because he uses the Apelles palette.
Yeah, yeah, which I'll never adopt that. I mean,
That's just too much. That's too far.
there's my point though. It's like this
Yeah.
is a guy, no one paints better than Odd Nerdrum, right? There are a lot of people that paint. You could
Mm.
argue a lot of people that paint as well, but no one paints better than Odd Nerdrum, right? And and yet there's no way my temperament would ever allow me to use the Apelles palette. I mean, that is the grayest palette. It's just not part of my temperament. But
He's
man, are
got
his paintings gorgeous.
he's got
I
to be
mean,
using blue somewhere. Surely.
that's not
Surely.
what I've heard. I mean, I think he's just using black.
I mean, I'm looking. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here for a second, Jeff.
Okay.
Look at this painting. You can't tell me this is Apelles all the way, like that he's using blue. Come on,
Oh
if
yeah,
he
you're right. It's got to be using blue there.
he's got to be using blue. This one here. Let's have a look. This.
No, maybe you could, but with all those warms, I bet you could. I bet you could make black look that blue. Maybe not. Yeah, you're
Oh,
probably right though.
I
But
don't know. Whatever. It's a great painting.
well, Zoran, they say that Zoran had the Zoran palette, obviously, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but occasionally Zoran would introduce blue.
Right.
So it might be kind of the same situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Odd Nerdrum. He's one of those guys. He's out there, but wow,
Yeah, you can't
interesting.
argue with the talent.
No,
I
you
mean,
can't.
he's obviously brilliant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, I will listen out for that episode with extreme interest. Um, I had a chat lined up. It fell through. I hope to get him on soon. It was just a scheduling issue. But Nick Thurman, which is one of his pupils, and he's blown up on Instagram. He does some really interesting work, but he's obviously heavily influenced by Odd Nerdrum. I think he studied with him for a time. So yeah, extraordinary, man, extraordinary. It's this kind of is. It's interesting because people want to know the right way to do it, and the more
there's
artists
no
I
right way.
exactly the more artists I talk to, it's like this is the thing that makes art so interesting is that we're all off in our own directions, just feeling our way around and coming up with these things. Yes, some of it can be based on things. It's like, I like that painting. What did Zorn do here? What did Sorolla do here? What did Rembrandt do? And, I'm just such a fan of that success leaves clues. You want to get what they got, do what they did, play with it, see if it can inform your process a little bit. And so this is interesting. Is there anything, so you've built this easel that's going to accept these giant canvases you got to work on. So, but from a technical standpoint, from a layering standpoint, is there, even just a subject standpoint, is there anything you think is like there's a bridge that you're going to have to cross here in order to pull that painting off, for instance? Is there a piece here that's making you particularly nervous? Or is there something that you think is maybe a little bit too ambitious right now, but you've got to summon the skills or the ability? As I say that, I'm kind of cringing because, of course, you're Jeff Hein. You're going to be fine. But
I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Is there anything that's making you particularly nervous, though, about any of these paintings in particular? Is there one that you're like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna push that one to maybe another 5 or 6 paintings, and then we'll tackle that one?
Oh, I think you hit it. The creation's going to be a bear. I don't know what I'm doing there. I think technically they're all intimidating, but no, I don't think technically any of them are more than any others, except for the fact that some are just a lot of figures, and it's just that always complicates things dramatically. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not just the time, but just it's really difficult to design multi-figures, especially when they start to accumulate. So those are the most intimidating, I would say. Like Christ stilling the storm. I don't know if that's the title I would use, but I'm a little nervous about that. I mean, I'm gonna have to build a boat. I'm thinking about it as we're talking. I'm gonna have to build a boat, a little miniature boat for my maquettes. Then I got to go. Maybe I'll come to Australia where the waves are just freaking huge and take some photos and come visit you. But I got to figure out that too. I've been to the east or west coast of the United States a million times. I've never seen huge waves, so I got to figure that one out. Because I really don't like using other people's photography, so I'm not opposed to it morally. It's not like I look down on artists that do it. I just don't do it. I don't like to do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to just Google large waves, Mm-hmm. So I got to figure that one out.
You got to get down to
there's just little technical things like that. Where
you got to get to Yallingup in Western Australia. So
they have some massive waves there.
Well, it's got to be my favorite wave. But I think I actually think saying that it'll ruin your painting, because people look at the color of it and go, no, Jeff, no, it's not that color. It's like, no, seriously, I photographed it. It's electric blue. It's that color.
Really?
Because it's West Coast. You get that light shining through the wave, and it just explodes with this teal. That
it sounds amazing.
It's unreal. Yeah. So okay, that'd be a really interesting one.
Oh, Sermon on the Mount. That one's going to be brutal.
Right.
Because how many figures are in that thing?
Oh,
I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I mean, I might have to figure out a way to sort of summarize the scene, crop in tight. I mean, I'm not looking for the lazy way out. Don't get me wrong. But when I'm dealing with lots and lots of figures, like something like the Sermon on the Mount, sometimes you just want to zoom in because you don't want to be distracted by the unimportant details, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. They're all intimidating. I'm scared to death of my easel and my canvas on it.
So no wonder you're doing so many podcasts, Jeff. This is starting to sound like displacement activity to me, brother.
Something like that. I know. I'm procrastinating painting. No, it really is. I know there might be a little of that, but I really do have a passion for the podcasting though.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute about the podcast. We'll change gears here. So what are some of the new directions you're looking at going in? I mean, you're churning out the episodes now. You're talking to some really interesting people. Um, you know, I recognize most all of the names of the, I'm like, far out, he talked to so and so. That's cool. So what's the direction now? Like, are you and you know, how do you also how do you stay kind of motivated and keep going? How do you keep that passion alive?
Um, the motivation's not very difficult because I just love these conversations. I mean,
Mm.
it's my social life really is what it's become, you know?
Okay,
So
cool.
I, that's not too hard. I mean, there are some days I'll wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I need to paint today, but I got a podcast. But in general, I'm anxious to talk to these people. I mean,
Mhm.
always I'm anxious to. It's just sometimes so much stuff is on my plate that I'm like, I can't have time for this today. But, you know, and I have to do it. You know how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But but for the most part, I'm always just loving it. But now remind me what your question was. Oh, what do you have plans?
Mm.
So I want to do two a week. And now that I've got an editor and someone who posts everything and does all the legwork, I think it's really going to just 4 hours a week for me, 2 hours for each podcast. So I think it's doable.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to start doing things like I did on my 100th anniversary. I don't know if you got to see that, but I had Kwang Ho, Rose Franson, and Joe Paquette on, and
Awesome.
I had like a bunch of questions. This is the only time I ever wrote down questions because I thought, what are some things that these three people could talk about?
Hmm.
You know, it's easy when you're just curious about an artist just to show up, right?
Hmm.
But in this case, it was three of them. I'm like, okay, what is something that these three could talk about? So I had probably 15 topics. The first question I asked was, what is art? And we talked for 2.5 hours about that. That was it. One question.
What is
What is
art?
art? And we went off for 2.5 hours. And the great thing about those three is they're all such different personalities. It was a great combination. But I want to start bringing in three different artists every week, or at least every other week, and having a conversation. And I'm tempted to just have it be random, where I just send them a calendar. They don't know who else is on it. They just sign up for one of the triple interview days and they don't know who they're interviewing with. I think that could be kind of entertaining because you never know. I don't know if they'll go down, you know, they'll
Just
be down with it, but
just like a drop-in interview. That's kind of cool.
yeah. And then they don't, yeah, they have no, we could get some weird mixes, you know, like Joe Paquette was slamming on Dutch painters. Maybe we'll end up with Joe Paquette and Carlo Russo on the same podcast. That'll go interesting.
That'll be a brawl.
Yeah, it'll be a brawl. um, so, but I'm not looking for that, obviously.
It'd be good for views, man.
Yeah, it'd be good, right? It'd be great for views. So, and then I'm also thinking about getting more art history podcasts on there. Micah Christensen, who's my guest regularly. I'd like to get him on more regularly. I have some other ideas too that I'm sort of thinking about. Maybe getting some more materials, companies that know about materials, that kind of stuff. You know, I'm kind of curious what kind of things you're thinking about too.
Well, like you, I've had to find a way to just manage the time because yeah, it's a passion project. There were a few times that I thought I'm gonna hang it up. I'm done. I'm done with the podcast now, and then I'd get an email from somebody, and just random emails from all corners of the world, and somebody saying, "Oh, I just listened to this podcast. That was a motivation I needed. Thanks so much for doing it," and blah blah blah, and just really loving, beautiful feedback. And I every time I think, okay, I'm going to hang it up, I something like that will happen. It's like, no, 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 you got to keep going. And so the feedback that I receive is all the motivation that I need.
You
We're
do.
very.
Can I just say, man? Can I just say you do have to keep going
Oh, I appreciate that.
because this is the truth. This is the truth. It's not, you know, an obligatory compliment here, but dude, no one's better at interviewing in the art space than you are.
Stop it.
No, no. Here's the thing. I'm
This
not kidding when I
doofus,
say that.
this doofus, come on.
No, here's why you're good at it. Here's why you're good at it because it's never about you, right?
Okay.
That's my pet peeve when artists interview. And I mean, you talk about yourself, but only in the context, only in times when it relates to the other person. It's not like hey, this podcast, I'm just bringing on a guest so that I can show everyone how much I know about art, right?
Ugh,
And I
yeah.
feel like there's a lot out there like that. And you come off and it's sincere, you come off really hungry. Like you come off the way I feel when I do a podcast, where it's like I just want to know everything about this artist.
Yeah, man.
But the other thing about you is you're very you just got the personality for it. You're just very articulate. You're off the cuff. You don't need notes and prompts. You just naturally good at you're socially intelligent, right? And that's why I say that you're a big inspiration for my podcast, because I think there needs to be more podcasts like that. There's the podcast where the host is socially intelligent and curious and not self-absorbed,
Wow.
just there to learn. I think those are the kind of podcasts we need out there,
Wow.
especially in the art space.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm just here
Appreciate that.
just here to compliment, man.
I'll take it. I'll take it, man. I'll take it all day.
Yeah, but don't quit, dude. Plus, you've got a huge following, man. I mean, that's one thing about you. It's killing me. My podcast seems to be doing well, better than I ever imagined it would,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
yet it's so frustrating watching it grow at snail's pace. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh my
Well,
gosh.
to be fair, the podcast for us is very much the same. It's a niche thing, right? Like, so what are we doing? Okay, we've talked here for nearly 2 hours, right? And so for most people in this happy meal culture, so we're watching shorts and reels and TikToks and all this stuff. People have trained their brains for this instant gratification, and that's what social media has done to us. So for people, and this is generally people of an older generation, they don't want that. They want to do a deep dive, and they want to know, okay, I'm going to be painting now for the next 4 hours. I'm going to queue up Jeff Hein. I'm going to queue up Creative Endeavour, and we're gonna geek out on the Undraped Artist and whatever. And so they're listening to these long form conversations. But this is where we have the opportunity to unpack some serious stuff. And that's what I'm excited about, doing it. But the nature of the content itself means that you're not going to get those views. You're not going to get that reach, that short, more instant stuff. Oh, did you see that clip, that thing? And it's like 30 seconds or whatever. That's the stuff that tends to go viral. And when we separated out the podcast from the actual YouTube channel, it was very interesting. First of all, like, we were getting a lot of views on YouTube because I was just putting them on my YouTube channel that I was doing for my normal painting tutorials.
Yeah, and you've got
But
what, like almost 600,000 followers or something?
we're getting close to that. But what would happen is when you would look at the algorithm, the viewing would spike and then it would just drop right off immediately because people are like, oh, I see what this video is. It's not Jeff Hein painting. He's just talking to Jeff Hein. Well, boring. I'm going to click off, kind of thing. People didn't want to hang
Oh, you
around
mean
for the.
they wouldn't listen to the whole
They
thing
they
at
wouldn't
all?
listen to the whole thing. The hardcore people, the fans, would stick around, but like, it's such a niche thing. So the thing that I've realized is that the people that are listening to this, and I just want to send them some mad love right now through this microphone, direct to them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening this long, because I appreciate it. I know Jeff appreciates it. But it's that group of people. They're the ones that are really passionate about this stuff, and they're the ones that will actually take the time to not only listen, they'll turn around and write. They'll turn around and make a comment or leave a review, and they'll say, actually, this conversation made my day. This is why I'm also becoming a little bit more unapologetic about my faith, because I, to be honest, I hid it under a bushel, which we know now is I know it's a sin to hide that under a bushel. Why? Because the world doesn't accept it. Well, screw the world, man. I'm in the world. I'm not of the world. And so this is something that's coming out a lot more in the podcast, because I can't separate me out from that. Now, I'm not trying to push this down on other people, but it comes out. And then I get messages from people saying, hey, I got one just the other day. It's like, hey, thanks for being unapologetic about your love for Christ. Like, yeah, you bet. Well, he died for me. At least I could do is talk about it in a podcast. So it's interesting, man. But you will get the people that will click off and go, oh, the last thing we need is more Christians.
Oh, I've had those comments. Yeah. Not about
Oh,
me though. With my
yeah.
podcast, and I think we're probably on the same page with this. I don't necessarily see not proselytizing as hiding your light in a bushel. So when in my podcast, the microphone is open to the guest. Like if they
Yes.
want to talk about religious topics, I don't care if it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. You tell me what inspires you, right? Go for it.
Yeah.
It's your platform. And that's how I look at it. I don't ever talk about it because I don't talk about me, right? It's not about me. The podcast isn't about me. But I'm free. This podcast, at least unless I misunderstood the invite, is a little more about me than my podcast. Sorry.
Oh no, I wanted to use you as an opportunity to talk more about how much I know. Why would I get Jeff
Exactly.
Hein? Why would I get Jeff Hein on the podcast to talk more about what I know? Like, 'cause,
Exactly. That's why
dude,
you're
when
good at it.
when I'm sitting in front of you, it's like, oh, I know nothing. Especially when you start showing your gadgets and then talking about opacity, transparency. I was like,
Stop, dude. You're killing me.
I'm a numpty over here.
But you see what I'm saying? Like
Exactly.
in this case, I'm not shy about it. And I was interviewed by Kwang Ho. I'm not shy about it. I'm interviewed, I've been interviewed plenty of times. I'm never shy about it. But on my podcast, I never talk about it because I don't talk about me. Right. But my guests have talked about it numerous times because I think that they're comfortable knowing where I come from, saying these things, right? Just like I'm comfortable with you knowing where you come from. And man, but I've had some nasty comments from it. It's like not toward me, but toward my guests. I just delete them. It's not a freaking democracy, man. I'm like, look, you don't like my pot, you don't like what you're hearing, you can take a hike. I didn't ask you to come here. I'm just offering this exposure to this artist. If you don't want it, move along. But I'm not going to keep your comment. Your nasty comment toward my guest who sacrificed 2 hours of their time to share everything they know with you. Yeah, it's
hard.
Unfortunate.
That was hard getting used to. I got to admit, like that, because I mean, of course, I want to be liked, and I think most people like, and I don't quite trust when people. Oh, I don't care what anybody thinks.
No one actually believes that.
Yeah. I'm like, really? No, of course I want to be liked, but I've gotten better, especially doing the podcast of being able to say, hey, you didn't like it? No problem. It's not for you. Move on. But they have to take the time and say, well, no, I'm gonna cut you a new one, and I'm gonna give you my 2 cents worth on the way out. Yeah, so I never really saw that. It's just if I don't like something, I just stop watching.
I know I'm not one to comment and troll. That's for dang sure. It's interesting. I learned a lesson. I'll be 50 next year. I think I mentioned that, or next month. And it's crazy how long it took me to learn this, but I've had enough experiences now. Well, let me preface by saying I've had plenty of experiences where I deserve to not be liked, where I've done something that deserves what I got, right? Where people have been like, yeah, Jeff was a real a-hole in that moment and I don't like him anymore. I've been an a-hole. And I think most people have at some point in their life.
Oh yeah. Guilty.
But what I've learned is there are probably more times where people have not liked me when I didn't do anything. They just don't like the way I look. They don't like the way I talk. They don't like my hats. Like or someone said something about me that they believed that wasn't true, or whatever the case may be. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, even though we all want to be appreciated and we want to be liked, like it is impossible to live that way, that everyone approves of you. It's literally impossible. So I'm tired of trying. I'm done trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, that's not to say I'm not trying to be a good person, right? We, obviously we need to be a good person, but I'm not going to play that game anymore where I'm trying to like be the right person for every individual. No, that's just stupid, because you can't win that game.
No,
you can't win that game.
And the people that try, we end up not liking them because we're like, well, who even are you? Trying to please everybody and be everything for everybody and not cause offense or not have anybody.
Because they're just fake anyway, right? Yeah.
Man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. But you're right. Putting yourself out there on a podcast as the host, it's definitely a vulnerable place to be. But I've fortunately got to that place where, while I'd still care, it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. When people say things that are negative, I'm just like, well, yeah, I figured some of you wouldn't like me anyway. I kind of went into it knowing that. So
Isn't it interesting that you know when you're thinking about it as a content creator, this is why it's so interesting talking to you about this sort of stuff, because you really get that side of things, being on the other side of this, and seeing what goes on and what goes into it, and also the far out the investment that goes into it of just your tech and your equipment, let alone machines. If you got to build something that's going to do something in particular, I build my stuff out of trash, dude. Like, you are proper high spec over there. It's unreal.
yeah, I think of myself as more of a maker that also paints. So I grew up making things, and I'm late to the painting party.
Wow. Wow. We're just about to install. Okay. So my buddy's an ex. Uh, uh, I want to call him an engineer, but he was kind of fabrication. He builds stuff. He works out solutions for things, and he used to work for government back in the UK back in the day. Um, and so, I talk to him if I need some sort of solution. But let me pick your brain first. When we started this podcast, it was beautiful. You just switched the lights around, you pulled a cord, it did something with a light shade. You've now got the LED blue glow behind you. And then you grabbed the light, that softbox light, and I saw it slide gracefully through your studio. But I can't see your. Do you have a crossbar railing system,
Oh,
or
dude,
something
my
up there?
studio, I am spoiled rotten. I call my studio Santa's workshop because I can build anything out of any material,
Yeah,
metal, steel, leather, wood. Um, I guess metal and steel are the same thing, but you get my point.
yeah.
But yeah, so and I've got a lot of things are automated. I've got my ceiling is packed. I mean, if I could turn my studio upside down,
Okay.
there would be no place to walk. Like, my ceiling is packed full of equipment, and I've got 10 lights that are on accordion arms that come up and down, and they slide all the way across the length of the studio, which is this particular room is 50 feet long. They go all the way down and all the way
Whoa.
left to right, all 10 of them. And then I've got this great light that like is on a motor that swings down in front of my painting that's full spectrum that illuminates the whole painting. It's the whole width of the studio.
Wow.
I've got skylights on both sides. So when you saw me pulling the cord, there's this there's a sort of a curtain that's horizontal that goes across under the
Mhm.
skylight. The skylight's huge. It's 12 feet by 8 feet. And this
What?
this blackout curtain just goes all the way across and blocks it out.
Is this in your house?
No, I own a building in Salt Lake, a commercial building.
Wow. Dude.
And then, yeah, dude, it's like there's so many widgets and gadgets and whatnot in here. It's fun. If I ever had to move, it would be a disaster. I'd have to start all
No,
over.
you can't
And
move. You can't move. That
I
that's
I
your
don't know.
that's your
I'm never gonna
spot.
be able to. I'd like to be able to build more building, but I don't think I can ever move. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, I can't get these easels out of my studio. The doors aren't big enough. So I'd literally have to cut, I'd have to take a torch and I'd have to cut the easels in half
Yeah.
and then get them to the new studio and weld them back together.
Or
That would be
do you
terrible.
have any neighbors that you share a wall with?
Well, there's a building right next to mine that's
Yeah.
just been sitting there that's owned by a developer. They want to tear it down and develop, and I'm just dying. I'm hoping that it falls through and they will sell it to me.
Yeah. Take the wall out,
But
dude. Take over
and
next
then
door
it's
too.
literally touching my building, and it's another building about the same size as mine. I could double my space. Mine's 3,000 square feet, and this one's about 3,400. And I could
Wow.
double my space, but they won't sell it to me as of right now. It's killing me.
Oh.
It's
Hey,
killing me. I've reached out to him several times. They're like, no, we're not selling it. I'm like,
come
but what are you
on.
gonna do?
Is there any articulation on the camera that I'm talking to you on right now? I'm dying to see up into that ceiling.
Oh
Come
yeah,
on.
let me see if I can show you some stuff here.
Come on,
Let
Jeff.
me.
This is amazing. I'm going to show my buddy Mike this later. This is cool.
All right, let me see if I can back up enough here.
Yeah, he's
All
going to
right, so
be.
here's the ceiling. Hey,
Whoa!
Addie. Could you go turn on that light and lower the thing to show him?
Where?
Dude, I feel a little bit like
Yeah,
that
I'm
right
glad
now.
you feel that way, but I go to other people's studios like a Michael Shane Neal studio, for example, and it's just got a fireplace and all the furniture is perfect and it's like just so beautiful.
He's the most
Mine is
dapper artist I've ever seen.
Yeah,
He
mine's a
always,
warehouse. It's like I love it. It's perfect for me as a person
yeah.
who likes to make things, but it's a warehouse with a loft. I mean, it's
Dude, you
you know,
wouldn't
it's not dapper, as you put it.
if ever I came to visit you, you wouldn't get me out of there. You'd have to call the police.
Then you should come, man. We have a good time.
It'd be great, man. And there's a few, actually, it's interesting. There's a few of you in Utah that I'm lining up here that I probably got to come visit at some point. I was talking to John Darley recently, and he's a dude. He's a real dude.
He's a cool guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He studied under you for a little while.
He did. Yeah. For 4.5 years or something.
That's awesome. He's a great
Yeah.
painter too. And it was a real joy to talk to him. He's you know, but no, what a treat this has been, Jeff. Really, I really appreciate this. Appreciate your time. I just, again, this is why I do the podcast. Now, I don't need anybody to remind me why I should be doing this, but I do appreciate the messages from people listening. If you want to send me a message and say keep going, that's always nice to read. But
Yeah.
this is why I enjoy this, because I come away from these things thoroughly inspired. You're the man. I'm really inspired right now. I'm really inspired. I love what you're doing and the direction you're going, and it's incredible to watch this journey unfold continually. And I'm so excited for this big epic project that you have, this behemoth. What a subject, what a what a task in front of you. It's extraordinary. But
I appreciate that.
It's been
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm honored
Jeff.
that you invited me back. I feel special to be on twice.
Of course. Of course.
This is awesome.
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You're running out of people. I get it. I totally get it.
No,
Well,
Jeff,
if I get on the third time, then I'll be rolling with Joe Paquette. I'm not holding my breath, but
yeah, no, that's kind of cool. Well, yeah, we'll see. I know we got a lot to talk about. So I don't think we'd have any trouble filling up a third and a fourth.
yeah, give me a call in 5 years when I have something to talk about.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jeff, I really appreciate this, man. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. A huge thank you and a shout out to Jeff Hein for joining me for this second installment. Man, I really got to have him back on the podcast again one day. Hopefully not too long between these installments, but what a treat this was. Now, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to follow Jeff's work, then I'll include a link to his Instagram and to his website in the show notes. Make sure you find that in the description that accompanies this podcast. Again, if you ever want to find the video version of the podcast, you can find that at tish.academy. Find that link in the description as well. But if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me a huge favor, would you? Would you share this on your social media? It really helps get the podcast out there to more and more people. The show is growing, and I have you to thank for that. Thank you so much for doing me a solid and sharing this with your followers on Instagram and Facebook or Twitter or wherever you got the social stuff happening. Thank you so much. And also, while you're at it, if you can leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on, it makes a massive difference to the show and how it's ranked in that algorithm and helps more and more people find it. Thank you once again for taking this time and joining me here in the studio. I've really enjoyed your company. I'll see you again in another episode of the Creative Endeavour.